Welcome to Harbinger's flagship interactive webinar, Power Hour. Select the right speaker for audio output. Test your speaker from the audio settings. If necessary, join the webinar using your phone. Use the Q&A panel to share your questions. This webinar is being recorded. Attendees will receive the recording. Let's tune in.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shrikant Pattathil. A warm welcome. Today, we are here to discuss a very interesting topic. And let me start by saying that, over the last 10 or 15 years, as e-learning has evolved, uh, exam prep tools for certification, they've got better and better. And we may even say that, they are, if you look at it from all perspectives, they're one of the best. But yet, we have not been able to improve the pass rates consistently. So that's been a challenge. So one way to look at it or say is that, better tools don't always solve uh, an underlying problem. Um, which means that there's something more needed than content and just tools. Maybe there is more personalization that is needed. Maybe there is the fear of examination that needs to be changed, and as well as, of course, what other improvements in the systems and frameworks are out there. So I'm here kind of, and it's my privilege to host this wonderful discussion and bring in, industry experts and panel as panelists here who can talk from their experience and say what they're experiencing and how they look forward to change some of the things in terms of bringing about the shift in terms of getting better and better results when it comes to not just certifications, but also the performance outcomes when it comes to the individuals while they're performing the roles. So without further ado, let me welcome you once again to this Harbinger Power Hour, where specifically what we're talking about is how to not just focus on course completion, but also focus on the end result, which is certification and performance, and make it uh, a candidate success. So that's the topic, and we'll dive a little bit further. Before that, let me just give you a quick intro about myself. My name is Shrikant Pattathil, President and CTO of Harbinger Group. My passion has been to leverage technology to solve performance enablement problems at the intersection of learning and work. So, and this topic is pretty close to my heart, and it's my privilege to kind of talk about it and bring industry experts' views to you. So, as far as today's game plan is concerned, we're going to keep it simple. Initially, we're going to understand as to why pass rates have not improved, what are the challenges. Then you know discussing about what could be ways of which we can solve, whether it's frameworks, whether it is candidates' own perception and their whole view about how they go about the whole preparation. So what exactly it is. So we'll try to unbox some of those things. Uh, and let me give you some idea of when I said the exam prep tools out there are you name it, and we have those, be it from study guides to practice questions, mock exams, you know video libraries, peer learning. All methodologies are there, and in different learning modalities you experience many of these, some claiming a lot of success, some claiming that they will improve your overall results and so forth. But when you actually look at data over the last 10 years or so, and this is from the American Institute of CPAs, we have gathered, mostly for most of the programs, it's remained flat. Of course, for some there has been a slight increase, and some of the new ones, are probably showing better results. But in in totality, if you look at it, irrespective of all these tools and the new ways of doing things, uh, it's been flat. So that's a constant problem, as whether you are teaching a curriculum or you're wanting to certify people so that they can perform better their work from a compliance perspective. You're always worried as to after they put in all that effort, how can we make sure that the results are at the 90% or probably even more? And that's where we are going to focus. And on that note, let me bring in our panelists. Um, and starting with, let me welcome Angeline Brown, Vice President, Product, Becker Professional Education. Angie, thanks for uh, be being on this panel. And I know you spend a lot of time in this industry. So if you can quickly introduce yourself and also share what got you interested in this topic.
Sure, sure. So I'm Angie Brown, VP of Product at Becker Professional Education. We focus on professional education for the accounting profession, primarily in the US, although we do work internationally with those that are primarily interested in US and international accounting designations. I started my career as a CPA, so I came into the accounting education space having been a student and wanting to help others succeed in their careers in the best ways possible. So I've actually spent 26 years now with Becker, focused primarily on both test prep, helping students pass the US CPA exam, which is the exam you just saw those pass rate statistics for, as well as other accounting credentialing exams like CMA, CIA, and EA. And then we have a full career life cycle learning offering that offers continuing education and training, again, in the accounting space. But we don't get students into our continuing education and training if they don't pass that initial credentialing exam. So one of our most important goals as an organization is getting our students through that gateway into the profession so that they can become a lifetime learner with us and also a lifetime successful professional in the profession.
Thanks, Angie, for that introduction, and also sharing your background. I'm sure the audience would be interested to listen to your perspectives on how we could actually change, and what are the things that you have done over the course that is, I'm sure you have definitely seen better results. So we'd be excited to hear your perspectives. Let me now welcome our second panelist, Daniel Mummert, uh, Director, Online Education, American Academy of Ophthalmology. Hi, Dan. A warm welcome and good morning. If you can share, a quick introduction and also share, what got you interested in this particular topic.
Certainly. Yeah. Thank you, Shrikant, and thank you to Harbinger for the opportunity to join you guys. Um, I've been at the Academy, which is a medical association for ophthalmologists, for 21 years now. And I'm also really interested in the intersection of education and technology, as Shrikant is. We focus on primarily supporting residents, ophthalmology residents who come out of medical school, and then they have 3 years of first transitional year and then 3 years committed to preparing for to become a practicing ophthalmologist. So we craft the Bible for their studies there. It's a 13-book volume of about 5,000 pages. Um, so that's a very traditional or conventional kind of package of learning. And then I'm really interested as well in continuing medical education. That's making sure our practicing ophthalmologists can stay on top of their game with skills and other kinds of training to make sure that they're aware of technology changes and practice changes. And this is what most of medical associations provide for their members. And so I'm interested in this topic in particular because we are seeing we saw a definite drop after COVID, and we are I will say quite candidly still struggling to get out of that plateau that we've hit and find a way to increase our in-service exam success rates as well as qualifying exam success rates at the American Board of Ophthalmology. So I'm actually really interested to learn from Angie today too.
Wonderful, Dan. Thank you for that introduction and sharing your experience. And it'll be also interesting to hear from the CPA perspective, and also what the ophthalmology perspective. Also, it'll give us two different perspectives completely. Though it's continuous education and certification, but definitely the challenges are different. So look forward to hearing your thoughts as we move forward. Last but not the least, let me welcome Poonam Jaypuriya. Poonam, thanks for stepping in, and I know you had to do this at the last minute, so thank you very much for taking time. Poonam Jaypuriya is Vice President eLearning at Harbinger Group. She's one of our senior experts. Poonam, if you want to share your experience and also what got you interested in this topic.
Absolutely, Shrikant. Thanks for having me here, and good morning to the team online. I'm Poonam and have been with Harbinger for over 2 decades now in the digital learning space. At Harbinger, I work closely with learning providers and certification organizations. So the interesting part is I get to see both the sides of the problem, how learning needs are changing, and what technology can realistically enable that change. So one thing which I'm seeing quite a bit in the recent times is the problems customers are asking us to solve. Like probably 15 years ago, most of our conversations were around, we have this content, how can you make it online? Later on, it became, how can you make it more engaging? And then mobile, micro learning, personalization. So that's the kind of journey I've seen over the years. But what I'm hearing increasingly, like Dan also shared, that recently things have changed post-COVID. And I'm seeing that increasingly many certification organizations are asking a very different and an interesting question. How do I make my candidate actually ready for the exam? Or, how do we make sure that they are ready to perform on the job? So interestingly, I was on a travel recently, and one of the certification organization shared that they almost have everything, Shrikant, you shared in your earlier slide, like courses, instructor-led prep, practice test, textbook, but the organization was still struggling with the certification readiness. So, and that's an interesting shift. So if I complete a course, can you tell something about my activity? And, is there a way to make my my journey in richer? So the good thing is we have a lot of data now, a lot of assessment technology, and of course AI that can make sense of all of this. So for me, this conversation is very timely because adaptive learning or AI is not new, but finally we have the ability to move from measuring what a learner completed to understanding what the learner really needs. And that's what's exciting for me.
Wonderful. Thank you, Poonam. I'm looking forward to hearing your experiences from a practical standpoint as well. So let me first begin, Angie, with you and pose the question. We've shared the data and everything. And like, why do you think the pass rates have not materially improved? And what's your perspective? Maybe it's different. You think it's better, whatever it is. So look for what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the chart that you showed related to the US CPA exam is interesting because a new exam was launched 2 years ago, and we've actually seen some interesting kind of spread in pass rates on those exam sections since the launch of the new exam. So I want to speak to that really quickly, and then I'll step back to the broader issue. Really quickly, in the context of that exam, although they are looking at content to see whether there are any content drivers for the exams that have what we would consider higher than normal pass rates for a high stakes credentialing exam, one of the pieces of information that they have about those exams with higher pass rates that is very important, I think, as we think about how to help learners succeed, is that the exams with the highest pass rates in the CPA context are the exams the students take last. So the CPA exam does not have a required sequence, but there are exams that typically students take later in the test taking process. And all evidence shows that the later tests have higher pass rates than the earlier tests. So experience testing does improve pass rates. And our own experience has shown that in our course, we have examined the behaviors of students who are successful on the CPA exam, and we find that the students who have done more practice exams in our course also have higher pass rates. So something that's really important to success in the test taking context is experience with testing. And the CPA exam happens to have 4 exams. So the first exam that students take has by far the lowest pass rates, and there's one exam that they typically take first, and it has the lowest pass rate of all of them. And as students progress and pass and move forward, they do have higher pass rates in the progression. So an important thing to understand is that experience with test taking and more test taking context for the learner actually does help them perform better on the exam. But that is an individualized thing. If we talk about why pass rates in general haven't improved, I think to the point that you've made, we have done a lot in the profession to give students the tools they need to succeed. But you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I'm not sure that we have fully solved the motivation and the persistence problem for our students. The students who show the best behaviors with the usage of the toolkit we give them are the ones that do better. And the students who get stalled out in the process of navigating their way through all the tools don't do as well. So something that we have not, I'll acknowledge, fully solved yet for our students, but is on our mind as we work on learning experience improvement is how you lead them through the journey and keep them motivated so they use all the tools that we offer them in this great toolkit that we have as educators so that they do succeed. But providing tools is not the same thing as students effectively using those tools and being persistent and consistent in their usage of those tools so that they do succeed. So the more we can get them through the journey, the more likely they are to have that pass rate. But we see a lot of students not using the tools that they've been given, and we've got to solve that for them if we want to drive pass rates up. Because the last thing that I'll say here is we've studied the difference in pass rates between our students who use the full toolkit that we give them and students who don't. And there's a 20 to 25 percentage point differential in exam success between those who don't use the toolkit and those who do. So we can see pass rates being higher for students who we would call it properly use the program, but it is a difficult thing, especially in an exam in our case that sometimes takes students 2 to 3 years to get through to get them to consistently and persistently use those tools. So that's some perspective. It's hard to study and students get.
I agree. And I think what we are all motivated is to make sure that it continuously, the graph is kind of on the upward side. And it's interesting with for some of the new programs, you see a different observation. And once somebody clears a test first time, that means they figured out not only the using the tools, but the examination related context of performing in an environment which is a lot different than practicing, and then then you see consistently better performance. So yeah, I mean that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for sharing that. Dan, what are your thoughts on this particular question in terms of how have you experienced it from the ophthalmology side?
Sure. I will say first that I agree with Angie's premise that using the tools we have significant data to show that if residents in particular use the tools, which is they read the books, they use the ancillary materials around the books, which is question banks and other kinds of mock exams. If they study in person in groups, and if they join journal clubs, they are much more likely to succeed. And in fact, it's a curiosity when they don't, frankly. So if they use those tools, it's a significant advantage to them. The question is then, how do we get people to use those tools effectively? And I think what Angie said is right for us too. We've had this series of books for about I think about 45 years. We introduced our question bank about 7 years ago now. We have flashcards on our site. We have a variety of courses, videos, and other things. It's the structure around those things and how to use them that we haven't necessarily systematically put into place. And so in residency programs, there are program directors who guide a curriculum. But most, I think, medical associations, at least the smaller ones, don't necessarily provide hard structure about how to put those tools into place, how put together a reading list using your time. I think physicians in particular are especially crunched for that. They don't have a lot of time. They're seeing patients, they're getting through clinic hours. A lot of them in later years, they're managing patients, they're starting to manage families. So and the amount of information that they're facing is only increasing. So this is a reality, I think, for a lot of practitioners, but especially physicians. And so making good use of their time is hard. And so cutting corners with more tools makes it easy, but you're not necessarily putting in the work. And so I think what we've seen is through our in-service exam, we have an in-service exam that we give to residents over the first year, second, and third year. There's obvious improvement, as Angie said, year to year to year. And if they are getting to that successful point by their third year, they're about 94% guaranteed to pass the qualifying exam when they're done. Great rates. If they fail any one of those years, they're, I believe, twofold more likely not to fail. If they have failed all 3 of those years, they're ninefold more likely to fail. And so if they haven't caught on by that point, they're almost doomed. The question is why we haven't done anything about it. So what I think is interesting is we are finally starting to, as Angie said, use the signals earlier and put remediation practices into place. I think that's the big shift for us, of finding ways to identify where people may be struggling and helping them recover.
True. And that's a great point. And there was one conversation, where I attended, like generally the tools are made, or the systems or classroom is designed for the average people who pass, right? I mean, or move forward. And but there's a lot of people who might need the help and the intervention. And if it is done timely through the platforms and the systems, maybe they will be able to catch up sooner than later. Otherwise, the backlog builds up and it becomes like a problem that, it's difficult. It takes more and more time and effort. So interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Dan. Poonam, let me quickly bring you in on this particular topic, because you've been, building a lot of these exam prep tools and stuff like that. And of course, sometimes when they don't deliver the results, there is always a question about, why, right? So what's your perspective?
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting question, Shrikant. And I think there's a broader issue here. I think we have digitized the exam preparation much faster than we have redesigned it for an online world. That's how I look at it. So we
Okay.
kind of took a textbook and we converted it online as an e-learning course. We took digitized questions bank. We added mock exams, flashcards, mobile app. They all are very useful, but the learner is still often responsible for kind of you putting these pieces together or use them as per their preferences. So I'll just give you a simple example to visualize this, right? Let's just say Angie and I, we both are taking the same assessment and both have scored 65%, right? On the dashboard, we actually look identical. But perhaps I am getting the fundamental questions itself incorrect, whereas Angie is maybe she understands the fundamentals perfectly well, but she's struggling with maybe complex scenarios. The scores are same, but our learning needs are very different. Now, for one certification prep solution, I'll just give you an example of what we did for them. So we basically mapped the assessment questions, not just to the domain and competencies, but also to the difficulty level of that question. And the platform could start seeing the pattern behind the score. So that's the difference I think we need to focus on. Like a score tells me how I performed, but good, and am I the good readiness design should tell me why I performed that way and what is it that I should do about it. So as long as the system can give me those insights, I think we can close this gap of better pass rates. So, and in fact, I think Angie also made a very interesting point that if it's done right, she has seen 25% higher pass rates. So it tells me that the tools actually work. Then the question becomes is how do we help more learners take the right action at the right time rather than expecting every learner to be equally disciplined. So yeah.
Makes sense. That's an interesting point, and thanks for sharing that example. Even though the scores may be same, the interventions may be different, So yeah, interesting. So that leads me to probably pose the next question, which we hear quite a bit these days, is about, making the curriculum as personalized towards a candidate or learner as possible. And that makes the real difference. Dan, starting with you, have you experimented with any of those things, and any experiences you can share, from if you personalize the curriculum, have they shown you any better results?
Yeah. I would separate this into two things though. First, one is, well, this has three parts. Uh, I would say the adaptive, the personalization aspect, and another is sort of just a known principle, which is spacing out education over time. And
Hmm.
another is sort of this confidence measure. But I think the short answer is we absolutely have the ability to do this better than we ever have before, given that we have better tools to analyze large amounts of data. And so I would say for our own resident preparation materials, we've built into our main question bank, which is really more of a learning center at this point. Um, a few things that make personalization possible. One is we have a spaced repetition feature that, based on well-known principles, offers test takers and folks preparing for any other qualifying exam questions spaced out over time as they use the program to not just cycle through questions periodically, but to give them questions as Poonam suggested, that are recycling the ones that they've gotten right at a longer interval and making sure they see similar questions that are either harder or classified to topics that they're struggling with. And at the same time, they can see, which I think is really important to adult learners, they're seeing actually where their problems are. So I think, whereas kids, I think, are oftentimes blinded and I think this should change in children too, for children too. But I think for our adult learners, they want to know where they're struggling so they can focus. And so we provide a reading list. We show them a battery of scores across all the topics. We break it down by chapter level, so they can customize their reading essentially.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and the other thing we do, which is really simple but powerful, instead of just doing multiple choice questions, we have a setting in that someone can answer the question, type in the answer without actually seeing the right answer in the distractors. This forces a different level of cognitive sort of interface here because someone needs to come up with an answer that isn't just judging, distractors and a correct answer. They have to think a little more deeply. And so I think this is sort of reinforcing retention. I think when people struggle with things, they recall things better. They're also more reflective, so it has an emotional sort of element. So these three things I think have helped us, and we're noticing, especially people target when we first sort of broadcast our bank out. People just did lots of questions willy-nilly, and we actually didn't see significant improvement in their
Hmm.
what are OCAP scores the first year or two. Those in-service scores significantly now are tied to how well people use our exam prep tool, and
Hmm.
especially if they use the spaced repetition tool. So I think that's the main way we're envisioning this. I think long term we're hoping to do this more with remediation and AI, but we can talk about that more for that question.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah, the spaced repetition is a very interesting technique, and especially when it comes to, like you said, if you're able to make sure that the person is able to remember something, and the emotion and everything is involved with that, while they're doing it, then the chances of making sure that they recollect it during a certification exam is much higher. So that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, that's an important tip, I think, which we should
Yeah, I
probably
would just
all
I would just add,
definitely.
we're an educational organization first, so we certainly want people to pass, but we mostly want our doctors to retain the information so they're good practitioners. So that's really goal number one.
Yes, we want them to make sure that they can do things even if they don't have any AI by their side. So definitely with doctors, I mean, we hear you. Poonam, your perspective on, I'm sure you built a lot of personalization, and as you build content, you build systems and stuff like that, but looking at it from a candidate needs, guide preparation, and building confidence perspective. And definitely Dan touched upon a few. If you have any, different perspective or different example, we're happy to hear.
Sure, Shrikant. So for me, personalization, what happens is many times people complicate that word personalization, saying everyone should have everything different. For me, personalization isn't about giving every learner different content. It's about giving each learner the right intervention at the right time. So it comes down to a very simple question like, can I help the learners spend less time on what they already know and more time on what they don't know? So if we saw this, like, in one of our certification solution we worked on, the customer had good learning content, but many of their courses were like 2 to 3 hours long. Now, let's just imagine, right? If I complete a course and then I take a practice assessment, the system discovers that I am weak in maybe one concept. Traditionally, the solution was it would recommend me saying, Poonam, go back and take course number 3 again. But why should I spend 3 hours going through content when I mostly understand it? And what I really need to know is that one small concept. So can we break down that existing course into smaller, logically meaningful learning units and map them back to the assessment framework? Now, when that happens, the system identifies a very specific gap. It can take the learner to the exact learning intervention they need and then bring them back into practice. For me, that's where personalization becomes valuable. It isn't about creating a completely different course for every learner or many different forms, but it's really about giving that exact nugget which is needed. So, and that's it. What happens with this methodology is it also adds to the confidence dimension. Let's just say if I know that I'm weak in 3 areas and I've worked on it, and now it shows me that I'm stronger in 2 of them, I have an evidence for that, and it also tells me I'm progressing. And that evidence builds confidence, which is far more effective than someone telling me, hey, you did a great job. So yeah, that's personalization for me.
Interesting. Thanks. I was always thinking personalization means like everything is very, very specific to that individual. But yeah, it's a different perspective saying that, okay, it's the intervention or the type of intervention that's more effective rather than just trying to personalize it just by their way of learning or just allowing them to choose things the way they want. But when things don't work, that's when you think about, how can I personalize stuff? So thank you for sharing that perspective. Interesting. Let's move on and let's talk about uh, things like is there some sort of a methodology, if I'm looking at it from outside and looking to design a curriculum or design or prepare for certification, whichever way you look at it, either the candidate perspective or the publisher perspective, uh, is is there a methodology to design candidate readiness journey? And Angie, I know you've got a vast experience and you probably I mean, right from the early days to today, you've changed the way how the curriculum is designed and delivered. So is there something that secret sauce you have that you can tell us that, everybody can use?
I think that's a hard question because we're all looking for the magic thing, the silver
Sure.
bullet that will solve the pass rate questions and the readiness questions. I'll speak to 2 things. I do want to echo what Poonam just said about the way that we chunk our content. I think Dan, you may have mentioned, or maybe Shrikant, you mentioned in your intro, degradation of pass rates since the pandemic. I mean, certainly we've seen the pandemic had a real impact on education, and I think of the digital world that we are in has really impacted and changed the way people learn. So, like Daniel's product, which I think you said is 45 years old, the Becker program hits its 70th anniversary next year. So we have a very long history of successfully preparing students specifically for the US CPA exam, but we're not preparing the same students today that we prepared 20, 30, 40 years ago. Students today learn very differently, and we have had to chunk and break down the way we present our content differently to meet students where they are. So I do think from a learning methodology perspective, evolving the learning as you're learning, as your students' needs evolve is important, and presenting information in smaller, more discrete chunks certainly meets the needs of modern learners. So we found that to be true. But also, I want to talk about kind of our end-to-end methodology, because the Becker program is a legacy program, has been in the market for many, many years. We have had to ask ourselves, how do we evolve this? And what are the most important things in this toolkit that we offer students for them to do in order to succeed on their high stakes exam? And about 5 years ago, roughly coincident with the pandemic, we did a study of about 30,000 of our students, looking at their behaviors in our product. What product components did they use to drive their success on the exam? In other words, if a student had passed the exam, what did they do differently than students who didn't pass the exam? And some of it comes down to good study skills and persistence and actually working your way through the program as assigned, which I think we've already referred to. But there are certainly key things that students need to do to prepare for the exam. In the context of the CPA exam, there are very specific question types the students are tested on. Multiple choice questions, which everybody is trained on from a very young age. Multiple choice question strategy for test takers is not a mystery to most candidates and students who are taking exams of any kind. But there is a second type of question on the exam that is in the CPA exam, more simulation, scenario, and application focused. It's not about memorization. It's about using what you know in as close as they can get to real life context in the way that the test is done. And students who practice for those types of questions do better on the exam. Although we see that students who are less successful tend to just study multiple choice questions. It's easy. They know how to do them. They don't take a lot of time. They think that they will be a proof that they know the information, but being able to answer a knowledge recall question is not the same as being able to answer a question that really drives you to apply, analyze, evaluate, and use the information you know in a setting that you haven't seen before. So our most successful students practice comprehensively across all of the question types that are on their exam. That doesn't sound like rocket science, but again, we see students making the choice to not practice what is harder when that is a key driver of their success. So our learning methodology is designed in discrete chunks to take them through a smaller topic with associated questions, both multiple choice, where they like to spend their study time, and these harder, more comprehensive questions, and to have them start working through that series of study as early as possible in the process and just kind of repeat it on a loop as they go through the questions. We found when we did that study of 30,000 students that the most successful students are the students that comprehensively worked through our question set, got at least 80% of the questions correct, and we looked for a break threshold, and that was a break threshold. They don't have to get everything right, but they do need to get the majority of the content understood and right in order to be prepared. And then the most successful students didn't just practice, but going back to what I said at the start of the conversation, they go and they do practice exam experiences. They get familiar with the entirety of what an exam day experience is like, from a testing perspective, and they do that repeatedly. And if they combine these things, both the question practice and the exam practice, we see a much higher success rate. So our methodology is designed to take them incrementally through these things: multiple choice question and simulation practice, mini exams, mock exams, kind of on an iterative basis throughout the process to get them touching those key things that make the difference in their being able to pass the exam. And we try to do it in discrete chunks, because if you give them too much at once, they get overwhelmed and can't make it through the program.
Yeah,
Sorry, I was just cap this off. We call this process exam day ready, and we give the students exam day ready roadmap. Like, here are the things you need to do. And through the entire program, they're tracking their work against the exam day readiness rubric. And it's those students who meet the exam day ready threshold that are the ones who have a 65 to 75% pass rate, where people who don't do that are in the 45 to 50% pass rate. So it makes a big difference if they make their way through that process. And our methodology is designed around it.
Makes sense. Thanks, and Angie, for sharing that process. I know you have analyzed data across, a lot of students in a lot of years, and it's good to know that, just by chunking content on, it doesn't solve the problem. You have to take them to the entire methodology of how to be successful. And there, it's important to, in every chunk that you create, help go to the depth, so that the practice is there. And I heard from Dan also earlier that the practice and the continuous focus there, and consistency is what makes sure that your end result is successful, and definitely what we aim for is performance on the job. So that makes a lot of sense. I'm sure people have taken a lot out of that methodology you just shared. Thank you. Poonam, coming to you, any thoughts on methodology from a candidate, how to design a candidate readiness journey?
Yeah, thanks, Shrikant. So first of all, I agree with Angie. It's all about being in a continuous loop and practice. So for some of our customers, when we have designed systems, we have designed it as a 5-step process, and I call it as a continuous loop. It's diagnose, guide, practice, measure, and adapt. And I'll give you an example for this. And there's a reason I call it a loop. So what happens is, mostly in the traditional learning, the journeys were fairly linear, right? I'll take course 1, then 2 and 3 and so on, then take an assessment and I'm done. Now, readiness doesn't work that way. So let's just say the first diagnostic shows that I am strong in 4 competencies and weak in 2. So I don't need to take all 6 courses. I need help with my 2 competencies where I am weak. So first we diagnose the gap, then we guide the learner to the appropriate intervention, then practice again. That's where the measurement happens. So we measure whether that intervention actually worked, and based on the result, the next intervention is adapted. So if I have improved, perhaps increase the question difficulty. If I haven't, then maybe give me some other content rather than the same content again. Maybe I need another explanation. Maybe a different modality works better for me, or maybe even a human support works better for me at times. So the important part is the loop keeps generating evidence of readiness. I would add one more thing here, because many times our customers start thinking first about platform and then content. I usually recommend them to not start by an adaptive learning platform, but start by a blueprint. Like, first define what a ready candidate should look like, and what are the signals you would read from that journey, and what courses do you have, what question banks do you have, videos, me knowledge, and then you can say, okay, how can I take all these assets and then put it into a system to get my signals? And what I have learned over many conversations with my customers is that interestingly, most of the organizations have more than 70 to 80% content that they already need. So we are not looking at more content. The real work actually is to connect it intelligently.
Thanks, Poonam. Thanks for sharing your methodology around the loop, and it's thinking about readiness and thinking about not more and more tech, but when you say a candidate is going to pass, what's that ideal candidate, and what's the profile? And maybe there are multiple profiles of those kind, and then designing your systems, content, and curriculum to adapt to that. So yeah, I think those are interesting perspectives, and a couple of different methodologies that can be further customized or used based on your specific need. So thank you both Angie and Poonam for sharing that. I think I'm sure they're important details and tips there for people to rethink of how they could design courseware or material which can improve the certification pathways. So let's now, move to what everybody's talking, that AI will come and save us. And it's every field, and definitely the e-learning and certification field probably is getting disrupted, and everybody's trying to adapt and learn also in the process as to how to use AI. Everybody knows that it's there. We have to use it. It's very powerful. But Andy, starting with you, I'd like to hear your perspective. I'm sure you've already tried to incorporate AI into your approaches. And what are your early experiences? Where have you seen the good results, or where you're expecting to see good results? So what's your take on using AI?
Sure. I think there's two ways that we need to look at how we're using AI in learning and in education and ed tech. We are certainly exploring how AI can be used from a content creation perspective. And we are using AI to speed up the creation, at least the creation of the drafts of content, especially question content for our students. But I will say that is with a qualification. We find that AI is a good way to get started on the creation of assessment content for our students, but it is not the end. We find that it can give us a canvas to work with, but we do not find AI to be sophisticated enough to create an end product from an assessment perspective for our learners. So although we're using it to draft question practice for our students primarily, but also learning content, we are finding that we definitely have to have the subject matter expert take that wet canvas, that draft, and refine it, apply what they understand about the profession, about the testing context, in order to get the content ready and good enough to be put in front of our students and help them with their exam preparation. So it's helping us move faster in content creation, but I would say it isn't magic. It doesn't produce a good end product. It just produces a good place to start from a content creation perspective. We're glad to have it, but certainly need our subject matter experts, maybe even more than ever, in order to take that canvas and refine it. From a learner perspective, we actually have incorporated an AI tutor that we call Newt, after the founder of the Becker organization, Newt Becker, into our exam review platforms. And we did that over a year ago. So Newt was launched to our students in May of 2025. That was after 9 months of development. So we did not take the introduction of AI into the learning context lightly. We have a strong history of academic support, meeting our students where they are when they're struggling with the materials. Before we launched Newt, our AI tutor, to our students, we had a team of about 12 people who answered questions for our students through an academic support case-based system where a student was studying. They'd write a question, they'd send that question into our team. The team would answer the question, the student would get the response back, essentially an email system for supporting the students. And over the 3 years preceding 2025, when we launched Newt, we had 85 to 100,000 questions from our students a year, which was occupying a lot of time for our team that answered questions for the students. Before we launched Newt, we needed to be sure that the quality of the response they would get, that our students would get from the AI tutor, would at least be as good as the responses they were being given by our academic support team, because we didn't want learning degradation or causing confusion when we introduced AI into the student support process. So we spent 9 months not building the user interface so the students intersected with Newt at the right points in the learning journey, because a lot of how you use AI successfully is dependent on where you bring it into the process. So we designed a system where students could use the AI companion for help when they were doing practice and learning, but we do not allow them, of course, to use it when they're in testing environments, because we don't want it to become a crutch for the students or something they think they can depend on exam day. Now, that's not rocket science, but it was important to us that we put it in the right moments in the journey. We also spent a long time analyzing the correctness of the answers and training the model to be sure that it would give the right feedback, the right answers to the students. So we got that ready by May of last year, launched it then. We've done 3 iterative improvements to the experience the students have with Newt, and that's about the user experience, user interface. All of which have increased the usage of Newt. We are at about 53% of our active students who are regularly using Newt during their study process for exam review. That's about 120,000 active users. And to date, at least through the end of last week, they had asked collectively almost 38 million questions of our system. So you can see that's an massive increase in the support that our students were getting. When it was a full-time team of experts, we were maxing out with being able to answer 86 to 100,000 questions a year. That was a full-time overtime job for our team of people to answer that many questions. And now we're at 38 million. And we're at 38 million with over a 90% satisfaction rate. So they're not only asking a lot of questions, but they're quite satisfied, not perfectly satisfied. AI does hallucinate. It doesn't always give the best answers. And we've built a feedback loop to make sure that we can catch that and remediate on that and give students individual attention when they come across the hallucination, because you cannot leave students without a safety net when they're using AI in a product. But highly satisfied. As far as outcomes go, students are feeling more supported in their journey, and confidence is important. They feel like they can ask a question and get an answer and move on with their study process. Then that improvement in confidence and the support that they're feeling is very important. But I'm going to say, but after that, we have looked at how usage of Newt impacts success on the actual exam. And we found that students who have low to moderate usage of the Newt tutor are succeeding well on the exam, as long as that behavior of using the AI is paired with consistent study and with our exam day ready journey. So exam day ready journey students who are using Newt to answer questions in the moment are seeing very good exam success. The but is we are seeing that a subset of our students are overusing Newt. In other words, they're offloading the learning to the AI, and they're asking the AI to answer the questions, but then not necessarily learning what they need to when they ask the AI to help them answer the questions. So our learners who are in the heaviest usage category are actually performing markedly worse on their exams than students who have low to moderate usage. So this is the risk with AI. It is important that we meet students where they are and give them the support that they need, but overusage and offloading the cognitive process, AI, is obviously detrimental to the students. And so right now we're thinking about how we improve the journey to pull students back from overuse. And we don't have that answer yet, but we know that we need to do that because it is a helpful tool for the students, but overuse is not good. So that's where we currently sit.
Makes a lot of sense. And if you have any case study around it, feel free to, share with us. We'll share it with the audience. I mean, it's a very interesting use case, and you've got a lot of success answering all the questions, but you also have a perspective on, people who use it moderately are successful. So, that's maybe at times counterintuitive, but it, there's a point there. If you're too dependent on AI, then during exams you're kind of stuck. So
Exactly.
so interesting. So let me also bring Dan on this point. Dan, in your experience, where are you in the AI journey, and have you seen any early results, either from an authoring standpoint or elsewhere, using AI?
Yeah, I would say the Academy is generally we're pretty cautious when it comes to the use of AI. I think medicine in general is. There are some very well established systems out there like Open Evidence that doctors rely on, but in general, it is I don't want to be unflattering to any other kind of practice or discipline out there, but to get it wrong as a doctor has real serious stakes. And so For us, we've definitely been using AI a few ways. One, as Angie said, we're definitely using it to accelerate content creation. And that's a few different really important ways. One is creating ancillary materials from our core materials, helping generate flashcards, helping generate test questions, helping also to look over the body, the corpus of content we have, and identifying where it's weak. That has accelerated because we do regular currency updates of our content, looking over scores using AI to analyze scores of our learners and our test takers, to see where there are trends and which will inform what kind of content we need to actually improve. This is all stuff that recognizing these patterns, which AI does really well, has helped us accelerate that sort of improvement, not just creating more content, but making better content. So that's definitely something I think everyone could do almost immediately. For us, I would say the other side, which is the Newt example, for us, it's been a really unglamorous journey to this point, trying to get our content into a shape that will work really well in a RAG model, so that the which is the retrieval model, external bank of content that your LLM model is going to draw from, to ensure that the responses are accurate, they're referenced, they're meaningful, they're not hallucinating. And so I would say we've spent the better part of last year getting our core books and other things into Markdown and other sorts of formats that are going to really play well in these models. So I think that's the first place for most people to start. Look at your assets and take a hard look at your assets and decide what needs to be changed about them to make sure that they're going to work well when you put them into an AI-based model. And for us, we haven't actually gone to production with anything yet, but we are about to embark on a study, mostly based on resident remediation, looking at those who with a few university systems, looking at a few cohorts of residents who are underperforming in their first or second year, and introducing an AI model that's trained on our books, introduces them to our self-assessment questions, and helps build out learning plans for them, and has regular check-ins with them to add more of the structure that everyone should probably have at outset, but seems to be especially important for those who are struggling. Giving people, I think the biggest question here, and I see one of the questions that came up in the chat, is about realizing when someone's struggling, they're into their preparation, what signals are most useful. This is hard, and so you need lots of low stakes signals early on. And I think for medicine has that benefit, because there are exams during their training that they have. They also have regular engagement with their program directors and faculty. But I think if you're designing something remote or asynchronous, you have to introduce low stakes assessment throughout, to make sure that learners can self-identify when there are problems. And I think that's another benefit of AI, because it's conversation based, and I think that it drives people to recognizing where their own challenges may be. So I would say we're hoping by introducing AI at a remediative stage, it'll bear out that there'll be a use case for it. I think we're also treading very carefully, because we know already, based on K through 12 education and undergraduate education, that over-reliance on AI does not yield good results.
True, true. Yeah, I think thanks for sharing those perspectives where you think, intervention in a field like medicine makes a lot of sense, because everybody in healthcare and medicine has, you have to tread cautiously when it comes to AI. So thanks for sharing those examples. I know we are short of time, so maybe I think those were the questions that we had. And thanks, Dan and Angie, for sharing your views, and also Poonam. I think she had to drop off for a meeting, but thanks to her as well for sharing a lot of examples, perspectives, methodologies, where to use, what results to expect, and so forth. Just to summarize very quickly, I think we kind of probably brought that point across, that of course, the curriculum, the courseware, and everything is important, but the candidate participation is also very important to improve the pass rates. And And while to do that, you can do various ways of customization techniques, personalization things, but that also in different ways, and also unique ways of measuring how a candidate journey, where the drop off happens, how the interventions are planned, all of them, if you can embed into your methodology. And of course, last but not the least, use AI efficiently, but not think that it's a silver bullet and solve everything. That probably will give you more and more success, and the graph can improve when it comes to improving the pass rates over course completion, but at the same time driving the performance outcomes that we are actually looking for. Very quickly about Harbinger, we work with organizations on the digital product engineering or digital content development journeys, helping them to transform the way people work and learn. If you need to know more, do look up on our website and and or reach out to us for any details.
Shrikant, we do have a question from Nicole.
Yeah.
I'm hearing more and more from candidates who create their own exam prep by asking AI for practice questions, especially for exams with already high pass rates. How do exam prep providers stay ahead?
Gee, Dan, instead of they going directly to the AI, how do they come to the, experts for preparing? I mean, that's probably the question.
This one's hard. Angie, do you want to start?
Yeah, I've got a thought here because there was also a question about what is the biggest myth related to AI. And I think in the education space, to me, the biggest myth is that the AI is as good as the educational resources that we have that have spent decades, if not centuries, being developed. So yes, students can use AI to develop practice questions for exams. But going back to our experience in using AI to build out our assessment banks, it is not good enough to build out truly exam representative questions. It gets you a start, something, but they generally are not good enough to be exam representative because AI misses a lot of context, and I just don't think has the experience yet to truly develop exam matching questions. So the myth is I can go to this relatively inexpensive resource and can get just as good a help as I can get from going to the experts. And as one of the experts who's trying to use AI to speed up our content preparation, we're finding it falling short. But if I'm a student, a candidate who doesn't have the knowledge that we have of our spaces, I may not be a good judge of whether or not the content I'm getting out of AI is good enough for the exam experience I'm trying to move towards. The hard thing here is we're in an experimentation phase and people are learning what is and isn't good enough with AI. And it may be that students have to find a lack of success using AI as a fallback before they retrust the experts who have the context to take what AI produces and actually make it what it needs to be, the right level of sophistication, content, and context to meet their needs. But that we are in a hard place right now because there is this supposition or this hypothesis that AI can be just as good. Although,
and Angie, sorry to interrupt you, but you brought in an early data point while you're talking about your experience using AI, that people who are using a lot of AI are not the ones who are successful with passing. So that's an important data point out there to put. Like I said, I mean, if we have material out there that'll educate people that just using AI for everything may not actually change your scores, or your pass rates probably may drop. It's just the right bit, and maybe that's where you need to go through a proper provider who can help you guide. It's also like a tool, right? An aid. So if you don't have that perspective, you're doing it on your own, it may not be for everyone.
exactly.
Makes sense. Sorry, Dan, I would love to bring you in, but looks like we are way past time. But it was an interesting topic, and definitely on some of the questions that we have, we will share it with you, Angie and Dan, and you can share your perspectives, and we can put it as part of the webinar recording, so that people can hear your perspectives on those questions. So we will do that post the webinar in a few days. So, Dan and Angie, thank you for joining me on this session. Thanks, Kubudini, for helping with the logistics, and also for Poonam. And thanks everyone for taking the time. I know we gone a little bit 5 minutes over for joining us for this interesting discussion, and also posting your questions. We were really excited to bring this topic, and definitely it was a great learning experience for me as well. So thanks everyone. Have a good